Good morning. Welcome to Breakfast. You're with Charlie State and Naga Monchetti.
Our headlines today. Millions of key workers and their families in England can now book a test to see if they have coronavirus.
Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon calls for a grown-up conversation over when to relax social distancing.
It's a month since the UK went into lockdown. The country once again shows its appreciation for our health workers.
The BBC's Big Night In raises more than £27 million for those affected by the pandemic and sees the return of some much-loved comedy characters.
You want to book a holiday somewhere hot? Computer says no.
Good morning. Not on offer. I'm looking at why the supermarkets have slashed the number of promotions and special offers during the lockdown and how it means that some shoppers are struggling to make ends meet.
And good morning. As the coronavirus leads to the postponement of the Women's European Championships until 2022, the England boss Phil Neville should quit now and not wait until next summer as planned. That's according to one former player.
Good morning, it's Friday the 24th of April. Our top story today. 10 million essential workers and their families in England will be able to book a test to tell them whether they have the coronavirus.
Teachers, social workers and supermarket staff are going to be among those who can sign up online for screening. There are also plans for up to 90 mobile units run by the Army to test people who are unable to travel to drive-through centres.
You've been sending in your questions this morning. Thank you for that. We'll be speaking to the Health Secretary, Matt Hancock. That's in just half an hour's time. First, though, John Donnison has this report.
It's become a Thursday night ritual as Britons once again came together to clap for their carers. From bin collectors to the royal family. For a fifth week, a show of support for the NHS and other key workers.
It's just a little tiny thing that I can do to, make some noise, just to say thank you.
Every week.
Every week?
Yeah.
Not missed one?
No.
Not yet.
And we won't.
And some of our carers have made the ultimate sacrifice. In St Helens earlier, a funeral procession for Sadiq Al-Haush, a 58-year-old orthopaedic surgeon, a husband and a father of four, who lost his life to COVID-19 as he worked to save others.
His family to me. It's big loss for me and big loss for the trust, big loss for his family. It will be very difficult for me as well, because in every corner of the hospital we have a memory.
And the number of people grieving continues to grow. Latest figures show coronavirus-related deaths in UK hospitals went up by 616 in 24 hours. But that's the lowest weekday increase in 3 weeks. It takes the total number of coronavirus hospital deaths to more than 18,700, though that figure is expected to be significantly higher, as it does not include deaths in care homes and in the community. Meanwhile, the government has announced plans to expand testing for COVID-19. All key workers, including supermarket staff, transport workers and teachers, as well as their families, will be eligible for a test if they're showing symptoms.
From today, employers of essential workers who will be able to go on gov.uk to get a test for any of their staff who need a test. And from tomorrow, any essential workers who need a test will be able to book an appointment on gov.uk themselves directly.
But the government's still struggling to meet its target of 100,000 tests a day by the end of this month, says testing and tracing contacts will be key if the lockdown is to be eased in the months ahead. And some businesses are reopening. B&Q, which has already reopened 75 stores this week, will reopen a further 80 today, with social distancing measures in place. Car makers, including Jaguar Land Rover and Aston Martin, have also said they'll reopen some of their plants. John Donnison, BBC News.
Well, in Westminster, Leila Nathu is on standby for us. Leila, So this is an important day in many ways, isn't it? Because a new style of testing, or at least the mechanics of how people can get a test, are changing. Tell us a little more about it.
Yeah, so the government has widened access to who can be tested. Initially, it started off with hospital patients being the priority. Then it was expanded to NHS workers and frontline care staff. Now it's being broadened more widely to any key worker who is isolating because they have symptoms themselves or any of their family members do as well. So the idea is that people can get tested and get back to work if they are tested negative or get the appropriate treatment if they are positive. Now, the issue has been for the government, they have made a commitment to get to 100,000 tests being carried out a day by the end of the month. There's just a week to go. It currently stands at 50,000 tests that they have capacity for. But one of the big problems has been that there hasn't even been enough demand. So not even half of that capacity is currently being used. Now, what is happening is that there are mobile testing units that are going to go out to care homes to try and test staff and patients there. There are drive-through centres for NHS staff. Certainly people who sign up from the gov.uk website today, they will be referred to one of the drive-through centres, and those centres are being rolled out across the country. But the issue for the government is to try and get that demand for testing up so that enough people can be tested and they can get on their way to meeting that 100,000 target. And it is important for people to get tested so they understand themselves what treatment they need, and also for the government to be able to understand the spread of the disease so they can start to understand how many people have actually had coronavirus so far.
Layla, there have been suggestions that Boris Johnson may be back at work fairly soon. What do you know about that?
Well, Downing Street are being clear that they have no official timetable for when Boris Johnson will be back in charge. We know that he has been recuperating at his country residence, Chequers. That is where he's been for the last 12 days since he was released from hospital. Now, of course, coronavirus can take a long time to recover from, but it's not quite clear when exactly he will be back in charge. Downing Street saying that he is not doing government work, although he has spoken to Dominic Raab, the First Secretary of State, who is deputising for him. He's spoken to the Queen over the phone and to President Trump too. So starting to see signs that he is back in action, but certainly no firm commitment for when he will be back in public.
Layla, thank you very much for that. Worth saying as well, if you're one of those key workers who's tried to log on to the site this morning to book a test, because that procedure has started from today, let us know if it's worked for you, because it's very interesting to see how the mechanics of these things work or don't work. So let us know this morning. We are speaking to Matt Hancock, the Health Secretary, at 7:30.
Layla, mentioning whether or not Boris Johnson is going to return to work on Monday. The US President Donald Trump says he's spoken to Boris Johnson, who he says sounded sharp and energetic on Tuesday. The Prime Minister has been recovering, of course, from COVID-19 at Chequers, his country retreat, since leaving hospital 12 days ago. And as Layla said, Downing Street hasn't said when he'll be returning to work. At last night's White House briefing, Mr. Trump said the Prime Minister was doing great.
I will tell you, he sounded incredible. I was actually surprised. I thought it'd be like, oh, Donald, how are you? He was ready to go. I'm very surprised to tell you this. It's like the old Boris. Tremendous energy, tremendous drive. I was very surprised because he called me almost, pretty close to when he got out of the hospital. I think he's doing great.
The captain of a Royal Navy submarine has been sent home on leave after allowing his crew to hold a dockside barbecue and party during the lockdown. Video has been posted on social media, which appears to show the crew of HMS Trenchant enjoying a gathering while being held in isolation. The nuclear-powered submarine was undergoing repairs at the Devonport base in Plymouth. An investigation by the Navy is ongoing.
More than £27 million has been raised for people who are affected by the coronavirus pandemic as part of the BBC charity special, The Big Night In.
It was Children in Need and Comic Relief's first joint fundraiser, and the government has promised to double the total raised on the night. Our entertainment correspondent Lisa Mazimba watched the 3-hour television special.
Like Children in Need Night and Red Nose Day, the show followed the familiar formula of featuring many of entertainment's biggest names. But this time, they were taking part from their homes.
Who do they? Who are they?
David Walliams and Matt Lucas reunited to bring viewers the first new Little Britain material in years.
Now, Andy, I've just been to the supermarket for you. Only took 11 hours. And I've got all your favourites for your tea.
The Vicar of Dibley herself, Dawn French, recorded a special monologue.
Those of you who were with me last Sunday will know that this room was crammed with Easter eggs from the floor to the ceiling. And now, voila, just the one left.
While David Tennant attempted to help Catherine Tates-Lauren with her homeschooling.
Sir, you've got to stand 2 metres away, otherwise you could infect me with the virus.
Don't be ridiculous.
Social distancing, sir.
Stephen Fry, as Blackadder's Lord Melchett, was joined by the Duke of Cambridge before they led the nation's Clap for Carers. There was a performance from some of music's most famous faces of the song Sing, written by Gary Barlow and Andrew Lloyd Webber. The stars of Strictly got the country involved in a dancing challenge. And the cast of EastEnders took part in a Queen Vic virtual pub quiz. The money raised will go towards helping people in need during the current crisis.